This is an oldie, but a goodie. I promise. I promise, guys. I re-upped my tea. It's nice and warm, and let's jump into this. This is Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, which I've had for quite a while since I was back in Texas. So at least 4 or 5 years is when I've owned, is how long I've owned this. I haven't played it in quite a while until I took it to Thanksgiving this year because I was like, this plays up to 12 people, and it plays in like 30-ish minutes or something like that. So that's perfect for a big Thanksgiving gathering. I took Deception, Murder in Hong Kong there, and it was a hit. It was definitely a lot of people had a good time with it, and it is a social deduction game in which investigators are trying to deduce the method of a murder, and the murderer and possibly accomplice is hidden in the mix trying to, obfuscate, to try to disguise what the true tool and evidence was, and then, deceive people. I really enjoyed it. Let's get into why it's good. So Deception, Murder in Hong Kong is from Grey Fox Games. It has some delightfully dark art to it. But if you are familiar with games like Mysterium, then something like this is going to be familiar to you. I know that it doesn't necessarily have the same ghost vibe, but you are split into different roles. There is the forensic scientist who can kind of be thought of as the DM or the GM of the group. They kind of lead the experience, and they're leading the experience in as objective or unbiased way as possible. You have a murder that's taken place. Everybody around the table has a set of clue cards and mean cards, and what that is the means of death are the tools that were used in either the death or occasionally accident. It's what caused the death, and then what key evidence or clue is also at the crime scene. So there's blue cards and red cards. Every single player around the table, minus the forensic scientist, has 4 clue cards and 4 means cards. One combination of those cards in front of the murderer is the correct ones that need to be focused on. So, for example, you might have arsenic, and the key evidence might be a balloon. And you, as the forensic scientist, or whoever the forensic scientist is, has to carefully push the investigators in the direction of those cards without being stuck by any possible confusion points of other cards that could match that. And what I mean by this is everybody's got the cards in front of them. The murderer is one of those people. They, in the middle of the night or in the period in time in which people close their eyes, they choose the combination. The forensic scientist knows which one it is. There are some optional roles that I can talk about later. And then everybody wakes up. And it is the goal of the forensic scientist to say the combination is bite and tear and IV bag. It is the goal of the forensic scientist to point them in the right direction. So you have your cause of death, and then you have 4 different location cards. We'll put out a random one. And then you have 4 of these different ones here. All of these tiles, which, you've got some Japanese lettering at the top there because, or not Japanese lettering, Chinese lettering at the top because you're in Hong Kong. And it is my job, or the job of the forensic investigator, to try and figure out how to suggest what this is. So it's bite and tear with an IV bag. So an IV bag immediately makes me think they're at the hospital. And then I'm going to think, a severe injury. And then I'm going to think, okay, the victim's identity. I think the person who's most likely to be maybe bitten by a dog or something like that, or attacked by an animal, is either a child or a senior. So I'm going to think maybe a child was attacked by a wild animal somewhere, and they're now... Oh, the location of the crime. Actually, guys, I'm an idiot. This needs to be, boom, in the woods. So you get to pick the green card, the location. There's 4 tiles. You pick which one you use. The purple one is permanently there. You can't ever mess with it. And these orangish ones are random. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, this was in the woods. It was a severe injury. A child, it happened to a child. The victim's occupation is they definitely don't have a job. State of the scene. I might say water stain, just to hint at the IV bag. And then another thing, the duration of the crime. Oh, this was an instantaneous crime. Like an animal bit this child, and it happened instantly. But then I might try to think, okay, their occupation, they're unemployed because they're a child, which means this clue isn't very helpful for us because we've picked child. Or if we picked senior, maybe we'd pick retired. Either way, these aren't helping us as much. But through these clues, the other people are going to try and look across the very, numerous amounts of clue cards and means cards to try to see what combination makes the most sense with the story that I'm telling. Now, the forensic scientist is supposed to be as removed or detached as possible to where you're not giving away who it is, because you're really trying to make this illicit conversation and illicit deduction from the other players around the table. The only problem is that the murderer and the accomplice, if they're there, they know the combination. And so they are trying to use this to create an entirely different narrative that points to other cards besides these. And it's this really fun push and pull of the investigators trying to deduce what combinations make the most sense from what the forensic scientist is sharing, and then also which one of them around the table is acting either the most suspicious or not making sense given the clues given, and try to figure out and decipher who's the bad person around the table. Because if you can figure out who the bad person is around the table, then you immediately lock in on one board of clue cards and means cards, and it makes it a lot easier to then use the example here to figure out what it is. So it's this really clever deduction game, but also one of the things that's valuable that a lot of my family liked is that it doesn't have a lot of pressure on you if you are someone who doesn't lie well. A lot of social deduction games hinge upon the fact that it's kind of a continuous state of deception. And that is exhausting in a lot of ways, but one of the ways in which it just puts people off is they essentially have to engage really, like, not toxically, but you're either like protesting your innocence or you're doing a lot of stuff. And really this game is much more focused on what makes the most sense. You could definitely hide amongst the investigators as a murderer by purely coming up with good reasoning based off of the examples given. If you can make a better argument for why somebody else's combination of cards makes more sense, it's not really that you're obviously the murderer. It's just you're coming up with a good explanation based off of what the forensic scientist says. So it abstains from a lot of the social pressure that this genre is sometimes burdened with. And it plays really quickly. It plays with high player counts. And there's so many clues and means cards that it's not like you're always going to come up with the same combinations. So Deception, Murder in Hong Kong was a big hit for us at Thanksgiving. I really enjoy it. I'm glad that I've held on to it despite having not played it for a while. And I'm happy about getting to test it out again and just kind of confirm how good I felt about it when I got it, previously 4 or 5 years ago or so. Yeah, I'd say probably, in terms of a rating, if I was going to give that, maybe like a 7.5 out of 10. Which for what this is, for the type of game that it is, for what I want out of it, I think it's really solid. Maybe an 8 out of 10, 7.5 to 8 out of 10. But, it's a really, really good party game. I'm really impressed with it. And I know that it's one that my family, if I brought this back and some of the other ones that I have, I know that my family would be happy to play it again, which is why it's good to have in my collection. If you've played this game, let me know. If you've played Mysterium, let me know. If you've been curious about trying this out, give me a shout out. And what kind of things do you like in your social or your party games that make for a good experience rather than a frustrating one? Alrighty, I think I'm going to sign off with a timestamp. Cheese knife. See you guys next time. Peace.